Tick, tick, tick. I stared at the clock. Tick, tick, tick. And gone. The second hand struck 5, and I was out of there. The fluorescent lights above buzzed and flickered, stabbing my eyes like needles. I grabbed my coat and left without so much as a glance or goodbye to anyone. Not that they'd notice. The Manhattan streets were cold and wet, lit in patches by streetlights that made everything look vaguely yellow and sick. A cigarette dangled from my fingers. I took one drag, then spat the smoke out with a grunt. F this. I flicked the cigarette into the gutter and crossed the street just as a car skidded past, tires screeching on wet gravel, missing me by inches. Jesus, I muttered, heart thudding. That's when I saw it, a flicker in the corner of my eye. The aftertaste. That's what the sign said. Just hanging there in neon script, glowing like a bruise against the night. I stood frozen, catching my breath. What the hell? I said to no one. Still, I stepped closer. Maybe I deserved something strange. Something indulgent. The place looked upscale, but not in a flashy way. More like the kind of place that knew it didn't need to prove anything. I pushed through the door. Inside it was warm, dimly lit, and quiet. A man in a long black coat greeted me, his voice smooth and rich like butter left out too long. Good evening, sir. He looked wrong. Not threatening, not exactly, but off. Too old, too pale. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and his posture had the rigid elegance of someone recently embalmed. Hi, I replied, uncertain. Dinner for one? He asked, snagging a menu from the host's stand with a papery hand. Yeah, I guess, I said, suddenly feeling awkward. Follow me. We walked through the dimly lit restaurant, our footsteps muffled by plush carpet. Cool jazz drifted through the air like incense. The place wasn't packed, just a few scattered diners speaking in hushed tones, the kind of quiet that felt intentional. Here, sir, he said, coming to an abrupt halt. He placed the menu on the table like it was something sacred. Thanks, I muttered, pulling out the chair and sitting down. I looked down at the menu, then frowned. It was just drinks. No appetizers. No entrees. No desserts. Just a list of cocktails, wines, and things with names I didn't recognize. I glanced up, confusion clearly written across my face. The drinks guide the experience, he said smoothly before I could even ask. You choose the drink. The chef chooses the rest. I see, I murmured, squinting at the list again. It was strange, and kind of pretentious. But also, kind of fun. I suppose. Just a glass of wine, then. He nodded once sharp and silent and slipped away into the shadows like he'd never been there. I leaned back in my chair, letting my eyes wander around the room. The aftertaste wasn't like anywhere I'd eaten before. It had that old-world charm you only ever see in movies, elegant but understated, like someone had spent a fortune to make it look like no effort at all. The walls were a rich deep green, almost black in the dim lighting, lined with tall bookshelves that didn't hold books, just antique wine bottles and strange, unmarked jars. Some glowed faintly. Others looked dusty, like they hadn't been touched in decades. The jazz playing overhead was smooth, almost hypnotic. A lazy saxophone, a sleepy piano, not recorded live. I noticed the band tucked away in a sunken corner near the back. 3 of them, all dressed in black, faces unreadable, moving with this eerie synchronicity, like they weren't playing music so much as channeling it. Each table was set with a single candle slender, white, and impossibly still. No flicker. No drip of wax. Just burning. Steady. Like time didn't work the same way here. The guests were peculiar. No one was really eating. Some sipped wine, some just sat with their hands folded, eyes glassy. There were smiles, sure, but they didn't feel real. Like the kind of smile you give when you're waiting for something to happen or trying to pretend nothing is. One couple near the far wall was holding hands across the table, both of them whispering with mouths too close to the candle flame. Another man sat completely alone at a corner table, staring off at nothing, his fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the wood. The air smelled faintly of clove, citrus, and something else I couldn't place. Something old, like the inside of a trunk that had been sealed for 100 years. I shifted in my seat. The cushion was plush, but the room made me feel like I had to sit up straight, like slouching would offend someone. Then I noticed the door, a single unmarked one at the back of the room. No sign, no handle, just there, like a shadow pretending to be a door. I looked at it too long. I know I did. But it didn't move, didn't open, just waited. I blinked and took a breath. What kind of place was this? And just as quickly as the man in the coat had vanished, he reappeared, silent and sudden. The starter, sir, he said, placing a small porcelain plate in front of me. I blinked. What is it? I asked, looking up. But he was already gone. No footsteps. No rustle of fabric. Just gone. This is so weird, ricocheted through my brain like a pinball. I looked down at the plate. It appeared to be a peach, just a single perfect peach small round dusted with what looked like fine sugar. I reached out and poked it gently. The skin gave way instantly, crumbling under my fingertip like the crust of a delicate pastry. Flaky. but warm. Okay then, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else, and picked up the fork. The first bite melted on my tongue. Sweet, but not sugary. Floral almost. Like jasmine had a cousin. There was something cooling beneath the warmth, a balance I couldn't quite explain. The texture was unreal silky, soft, dissolving the moment it touched my mouth. It was unlike anything I'd ever tasted. Actually, it was unlike anything I could imagine tasting. Not just delicious. Impossible. I took another bite, then another, chasing the sensation as if I could name it if I just had one more try. But I couldn't. It wasn't peach. It wasn't pastry. I closed my eyes and savored every bite. Warmth bloomed in my chest. Not just the taste, but something beneath it buried deep and rising slowly like a forgotten melody. I let the final morsel dissolve on my tongue and swallowed. When I opened my eyes, I was home. But not home as in my apartment. Not Manhattan. Not now. This was then. My childhood home. I stood barefoot in the middle of our old kitchen, flooded with golden morning light. The faded floral wallpaper I used to trace with my fingers was still there. The floor creaked in the exact same spot near the stove. I looked down and saw the red-rimmed pajamas I used to wear when I was 5, the ones with tiny stars all over them. And I smelled it. Pancakes. Not just pancakes. Her pancakes. Baby? Came a voice from the hallway. I turned. My mom appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Younger than I'd seen her in years. Her hair pulled into a loose bun, wisps framing her soft face. She wore her favorite oversized sweater, the one I always said made her look like a cloud. There you are, she said with a smile, like I'd just wandered in from the backyard. Breakfast is almost ready. Sit down. I moved toward the table, stunned, but everything felt so real. The chair squeaked just like I remembered. The table was still scratched in the corner from the time I tried to carve my name into it with a spoon, and she moved around the kitchen like she used to, humming quietly to herself some old tune I could never name, but always recognized. She set a plate in front of me. Pancakes stacked high, steam curling toward the ceiling. Butter melting into the ridges. Maple syrup pooled at the edges. No syrup in the middle, she said, placing the bottle beside me. I know you like to pour it yourself. I looked up at her. How did you remember that? She tilted her head, amused. I'm your mom. I remember everything. I laughed. Actually laughed. It was a sound I hadn't heard from myself in a long time. I picked up the syrup and drizzled it the way I used to, slowly, like it was a science. Then I took a bite. It tasted exactly like it did back then. Fluffy, warm, perfect. Like safety. She sat across from me, sipping coffee from her chipped blue mug. Watching me, smiling. Love you, she said quietly. I blinked. I love you too. I love you more. Her voice was soft, but there was something in it, an ache behind the fondness. Like she knew this moment was borrowed time. I wanted to say something more. To tell her how much I missed her. How often I thought of her. How the world had never felt quite right since she left. But all I could do was nod and keep eating. And she let me. She let me stay in that memory for what felt like forever. No rush. No sadness. Just the quiet sound of a mother loving her son the way only she could. In the way she cooked. In the way she looked at me. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I was somewhere else entirely. The sound of laughter filled the air. Kids running, screaming in that joyful, chaotic way only children can. My brother darted past me, all knees and elbows, chasing after a soccer ball that rolled across the grass like it had a mind of its own. I blinked. Now we were in our old bedroom, building a fort out of blankets and pillows. The kind that took over the whole room with flashlights under the sheets and whispered ghost stories we made up on the spot. I blinked again. We were at the lake, summer. My mom in a wide sun hat, handing us dripping orange popsicles. The water sparkled like someone had poured glitter into it. My brother splashed me. I yelled. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. Each blink pulled me into a new memory snapshots of a life I hadn't thought about in years. Trick-or-treating in the rain. Riding bikes down the hill, wind screaming in our ears. Helping my dad rake leaves just to jump into the pile 5 minutes later. Flicker. Blink. Flash. Like flipping through a photo album with my own eyes. Then I landed in the backyard. A folding table, paper hats, balloons swaying in the breeze. My 10th birthday. Everyone singing. The cake was lopsided but covered in bright blue frosting and way too many candles. I remember making the wish I wished for something dumb, like a puppy or a magic sword. I leaned in, drew a breath. Blew. Poof. Gone. Back at the restaurant. The candle on my table flickered gently. The jazz was still playing. My empty plate sat in front of me, as if none of it had ever happened. For a moment I forgot where I was. Forgot I'd ever even been here. The aftertaste. Right. That's how this started. I exhaled slowly, unsure if I'd been gone for 5 seconds or 50 years. My chest still felt warm from the memory. My eyes stung. I looked around. The room was the same, but I wasn't. Or at least it didn't feel like I was back. Because there he was again, the man in the coat standing over me with another plate in hand. Here you are, sir. He placed it in front of me gently. This time it was chicken. perfectly seared, artfully plated, with something delicate drizzled on top. I nodded numbly and sighed, picking up my fork. I poked at the food once, then closed my eyes. Boom. High school. I was 17 again, standing under the bleachers. And there she was. Hardly ever. We'd dated all 4 years. My first everything. First kiss, first love, first heartbreak. Her hair smelled like vanilla shampoo. Her laugh could pull me out of any mood. She looked at me with those soft brown eyes and kissed my forehead. Hi, beautiful, she whispered. Hi was all I managed. Even in a memory, I was speechless. I wanted to stay there. Just hold on to her. Rewind time. But memories don't work like that. I blinked. And just like that, we were fighting. It was graduation night. The air was thick with summer heat and alcohol and betrayal. You cheated on me? I shouted. My voice cracked from disbelief, rage, heartbreak. With Chase? Chase? My best friend. Baby, I'm sorry. Please, just look at me, she cried, grabbing my arm. But I ripped away and stormed toward my car. I could barely see straight through the tears, the fury. I slammed the door shut, started the engine. I didn't mean to leave her like that. I just needed to breathe. I needed space. But she ran after me. In her drunken haze, she chased the car. I looked in the rearview mirror, but she was gone. Then I saw the headlights. A car behind me. It had stopped. But I didn't see Harley. Where was she? Where is Harley? I threw the car into park and jumped out, heart hammering. My legs couldn't move fast enough. And then I saw her. Lying in the road. Still. Broken. The world blurred. I dropped to my knees, scooping her into my arms. Her skin was warm. Too warm. As if her soul was still trying to decide whether to stay or go. Harley, I whispered. No response. Just the silence of night in a world I no longer recognized. I blinked. And just like that, I was somewhere else. College. Working. Studying. Numb. Blink again. My mother's funeral. Rain soaked the earth in slow, steady drops, like the sky itself was mourning. People gathered in black, holding umbrellas that wilted under the weight of weather and grief. The preacher's voice was a dull hum in my ears. I didn't hear a word he said. I stood at the front, eyes fixed on the casket. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. My hands were fists in my pockets. Someone sniffled behind me. Someone sobbed, but I was quiet. I hadn't cried. Not yet. Not until I saw them lower her down. Then I broke. I remember thinking how unfair it was, how she'd never see me graduate, never meet my kids, never grow old. Just gone. Too early, too fast, too much. And I remember the flowers on her casket wilting as the rain hit them, petals falling one by one. Blink again. College graduation. A sea of caps and gowns, camera flashes, people cheering, laughing, hugging. I should have felt proud. I should have felt something. I smiled for the photos, shook hands with professors I barely remembered. People slapped me on the back, said, You did it, man. I nodded, pretended I was present. But I was hollow. The stadium smelled like sunscreen and pretzels, and too many lives happening at once. My diploma felt weightless in my hands. Everyone else looked ahead, next steps, next jobs, next chapters. Me? I just stood there, thinking how Harley should have been there, how my mom would have been there, how so much had been taken from me, and how I kept smiling anyway because no one knew where I had been, where I still was. And for a second, I forgot I was even in a restaurant, until the clink of silverware brought me back. Jazz. The candlelight. Your final course, sir, the man said, placing a small cake delicately in front of me. It was flawless glazed in something dark and glossy with a tiny gold flake on top. It looked almost too perfect to eat, but my fork moved before I could think, slicing cleanly into it. I took a bite, and the world shifted again. Suddenly, I saw it all like someone had pressed fast forward on the last 10 years of my life. My boring office job? Endless emails, fluorescent lights, pointless meetings where no one listened, the string of forgettable dates, swiping right on people I'd never see again, trying over and over to reach out to my father, always hoping he'd pick up, always pretending I didn't care when he didn't, bailing my brother out of jail. Again and again, and then today, walking out of the office, lighting a cigarette, the rain on the pavement, crossing the street, the headlights, the car, barreling into me, hitting me, hard, the sound of my body thud, and then stillness. I didn't get up. My body stayed behind, unmoving, lifeless. What? I jolted back to the restaurant, breath caught in my throat. The waiter was standing beside me again, calm as ever, holding a glass of wine. Your drink, sir, he said, offering it smoothly. I stared at him, voice cracking. What the fuck was that last memory? He tilted his head. Oh, that. You're dead. Huh? You died, he said again, matter of fact. A little over an hour ago, in fact. Very sudden. Oh. I rubbed my forehead, unsure whether to laugh or cry. So, do I go to heaven? He gave a long, amused smile. Nope. I swallowed. Right, so, this is it then? The end? He chuckled softly, setting the wine on the table with care. Not exactly. From behind his back, he revealed a long, dark coat just like his. Tailored. Heavy. Familiar. He held it out. Welcome to our staff.